My hands trembled against the podium, but my voice came out steady and clear across the chandelier-lit community hall. I need every single one of you in this so-called perfect neighborhood to hear this. The rehearsal dinner chatter for our HOA-approved wedding died instantly. 200 faces turned toward me. Neighbors who'd wave from their driveways. People who'd traveled from across the subdivision to celebrate what should have been the happiest weekend of my life. The wedding tomorrow at the Sunnyvale Estates Community Center. I paused, locking eyes with Mark across the linen-draped table. His smile faltered, champagne flute halfway to his lips. There won't be one. The silence slammed down like a gavel. Forks clattered onto plates. Someone actually gasped. Karen, HOA president, Mark's mother, and self-appointed queen of our little slice of suburban heaven, sat frozen with her wine glass suspended midair, her perfectly painted lips forming a tiny O of shock beneath that signature pearl necklace she wore like a crown. What are you doing? Mark's voice cracked as he started to stand. I'm doing what I should have done months ago. My voice broke then, but only for a second. The tears I'd been swallowing for 20 minutes finally spilled. You just spent 20 minutes mocking the memory of my dead mother. And you're all still laughing. The words landed like a slap. Mark's father, Richard, HOA treasurer and a man who'd just delivered that hilarious comedy routine, still wore the same smirk he'd flashed the entire time. The same smirk Mark had mirrored while chuckling along. My own father was already on his feet, face a mix of pride and pain. My brother Jake had his fists clenched so tight his knuckles went white, ready to flip the entire head table if anyone moved wrong. They'd heard every cruel jab, every vicious punchline about the woman who raised me, loved me, and left this world too soon. Mark's face flipped from confused to panicked in record time. Baby, wait. No. I pulled off the engagement ring. The diamond caught the light one last time like it was saying goodbye. I'm done waiting. I'm done pretending this is okay. The room exploded, voices rising, chairs scraping, someone shouting my name. But I was already walking toward the door, my mother's silver pendant warm against my chest, the one they demanded I remove because it didn't match the Sunnyvale aesthetic. 24 hours earlier, I'd been a different person, a bride-to-be, nervous but excited, ready to join Mark's family and finally feel like I belonged somewhere again. Now I understood why Mom used to say the truth always reveals itself, usually right when you need it most. What would you have done in my place? Stick around, because this nightmare didn't start at that podium. It started the day I moved into Sunnyvale Estates. 6 months earlier, everything looked picture perfect on the surface. I just buried my mother. The inheritance check cleared, and I bought the only house I could afford in a nice neighborhood. 3 bedrooms, white picket fence, the works. Sunnyvale Estates promised safety, community, and pride of ownership. What they didn't advertise in the glossy brochure was the HOA handbook thicker than a phone book and Karen Patterson sitting on the board like a spider in the center of her web. I met Mark at the mandatory new resident welcome barbecue. I was standing alone by the HOA-approved grill station, trying not to cry into my paper plate while the smell of burgers reminded me of Mom's backyard cookouts. He appeared beside me with 2 cold lemonades. You look like you could use one of these, he said gently. First week in a new place is always rough. His warm brown eyes held real understanding, no fake pity. I lost my grandmother last year, he added quietly. The grief hits in waves, especially in places that feel like home. We talked for hours that afternoon about loss, about how certain flowers or songs could knock you sideways. Mark never said move on or she'd want you happy. He just listened. Our relationship grew slowly, carefully. He'd show up with my favorite coffee on tough days, sit through old movies Mom loved, hold me when anniversary dates shattered me. His family welcomed me with open arms, at least on the surface. Karen would pull me into perfume-scented hugs, declaring I was exactly what Mark needed. Richard would joke that I'd finally made their son less of a workaholic. Sunday potlucks at their sprawling corner lot made me feel part of something again. The proposal came 4 months later. Mark took me to the HOA-approved reflection garden, a tiny patch of grass they allowed under strict rules. He knelt beside the bench I'd secretly planted forget-me-nots around, technically against code, but I'd done it at night. I asked the board for permission to do this here, he said, because I know how much your mom meant to you. Then the ring. Your mom would have loved seeing you this happy. Will you marry me? I sobbed yes, feeling like Mom had somehow arranged it from wherever she was. The first red flag waved at our engagement party in the community center. Karen pulled me aside, champagne flute in hand, eyes glassy. I'm so glad Mark found you, she cooed, gripping my arm a little too tight. You've been through so much loss. Now you can finally replace all that sadness with our family traditions. Replace. The word stuck like a thorn, but I pushed it down. She meant well, I told myself. She just didn't understand that you don't replace grief. You carry it. Wedding planning started immediately. Karen threw herself into it with terrifying enthusiasm. Now, dear, she announced at our first official session, spreading fabric swatches across her marble island. I've already spoken to the board. The Valencia room is perfect for a summer wedding, fully HOA compliant. Actually, I ventured. Mark and I were thinking the botanical gardens just outside the gates. My mom and I used to. Oh no, sweetie. Too many bugs, and the photos would be terrible under that harsh sunlight. She waved a manicured hand. Trust me, I've chaired dozens of events. The community center is the only civilized choice. Mark squeezed my hand under the table. Mom knows best about these things, babe. The pattern locked in fast. Every idea I offered met a patronizing smile and a better, HOA-approved alternative. My suggestions were sweet but impractical, lovely but not quite right for Sunnyvale standards. The flowers became our first real war. I'd like forget-me-nots in the bouquets, I told the florist Karen had insisted on. They were Mom's favorites. She grew them in our garden. Karen's nose wrinkled like I'd suggested roadkill. Forget-me-nots? Darling, those are so funeral-like. We need roses, peonies, flowers that photograph well and scream new beginnings. Death has no place at a Sunnyvale wedding. We're celebrating the future, not dwelling on the past. The florist shifted uncomfortably. Mark stayed glued to his phone. Mark? I looked for backup. He glanced up, distracted. HM? Oh, Mom's right. We want happy flowers. Happy flowers. As if carrying my mother's memory was somehow sad. The memorial table discussion was worse. I showed Karen a simple Pinterest photo, a small table with pictures of loved ones who'd passed, a quiet sign reading, "We know you'd be here if heaven weren't so far." Absolutely not. She pushed the phone back like it was radioactive. A shrine to the dead at my son's wedding? What would the neighbors think? Property values would plummet. It's not a shrine, I protested. It's a tribute. Lots of weddings. Lots of weddings aren't Sunnyvale weddings, Richard cut in, strolling into the room. We're not turning our reception into a memorial service. Next you'll want empty chairs for ghosts or those tacky butterfly releases. This is a celebration, not a seance. Mark finally looked up. Maybe we could put one photo in the foyer? A hidden photo in the back room. That was his compromise. Your mother is gone, sweetheart, Karen said, voice dripping false sympathy. The sooner you accept that and focus on your new Sunnyvale family, the happier you'll be. We're your family now. That night, I cried in the shower, so Mark couldn't hear. I told myself they weren't cruel, just rich people with different traditions. But fingering Mom's pendant, the one thing they couldn't find me for yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. I always thought I knew who Mark was, compassionate, patient, the guy who sat with me in the reflection garden and brought tissues without making it weird. But as the wedding approached, I started wondering if that man had ever existed at all. The change was subtle at first. At HOA board dinners, he'd speak over me, finishing my sentences with versions that please his parents more. We're thinking of having the ceremony in the traditional way, just like you and Dad. He'd interject, shooting me the not now look. Later, alone, I'd confront him. Why do you become someone else around them? What are you talking about? He'd laugh, pulling me close. You're just stressed about the wedding. Wedding stress. His explanation for everything. When I cried because Karen replaced Mom's recipe for the rehearsal menu with classier catering, it was wedding stress. When I got upset about Richard asking if my dress was modern enough for a Sunnyvale bride, it was wedding stress. It wasn't until the inheritance conversation that I saw the mask slip completely. We were reviewing finances, preparing to merge accounts after the wedding. My modest inheritance from Mom was listed. "What are you planning to do with that money?" Mark asked too casually. "I'm not sure," I admitted. "Part of me wants to save it for our kids' education." Mom would have liked that. His expression tightened. "We don't need to earmark funds that way. My parents are setting up generous trusts." "I know, but this is from my mother. It's important our kids know where it came from." "Important that what? That our kids carry around guilt from their dead grandmother?" His tone turned harsh. "Why burden them?" I stared, stunned. "Burden them with the knowledge that my mother loved them before they existed? You know what I mean?" He backpedaled. "There's so much emotion wrapped up in that money for you." "Of course there is. It's literally all I have left from her." "And you don't think that's unhealthy?" Mark's voice had that rehearsed quality he got when parroting Karen. "Always clinging to the past." Remembering my mother isn't clinging. My voice shook. "Look," he sighed, rubbing his temples. "At least my parents' money comes without the constant reminder of loss. Wouldn't that be better for our kids?" The room tilted. Guilt. That's what he thought Mom's legacy was? In that moment, I saw him clearly. Not the man from the welcome barbecue, but someone who found my grief inconvenient, embarrassing, something to pack away like an unfashionable lawn ornament. "You don't understand," I whispered. "No," he agreed, kissing my forehead condescendingly. "I guess I don't." The terrifying truth was I was starting to understand him perfectly. 7 days before the wedding, everything accelerated, masks slipping faster. The Patterson family gathered for the final menu tasting at the community center. HOA rules required all events be taste tested on site. Richard was 3 scotches in, holding court. I sat quietly beside Mark, forcing smiles through discussions of floral arrangements I hadn't chosen and music I hated. "Another thing to be grateful for," Richard announced, clapping Mark's shoulder, "is that our darling bride is basically an orphan. 1 set of in-laws instead of 2. Smart thinking, son." The table erupted in laughter. Even Mark chuckled, though he looked slightly uncomfortable. "Dad," he murmured. "Not cool." But he smiled and didn't correct him. Didn't remind anyone I wasn't an orphan. My father was alive, seated at the secondary guest table because Karen had separated immediate family from everyone else per HOA seating protocol. I excused myself, hands shaking, and fled to the restroom. Orphan. He'd call me an orphan like Mom's death was a convenience, like my grief was a punchline. That night, while Mark showered, his phone kept lighting up. His brother Jason texting about bachelor party plans. I hadn't meant to look, but as I set the phone down, my name caught my eye. I scrolled, heart pounding. Jason. So is she still insisting on that memorial crap? Mark, working on it. Mom's about to shut it down completely. Jason. Good luck with the mommy issues for the next 50 years, bro. Mark. As long as she doesn't start crying during the vows again. So embarrassing at rehearsal. I stared at the screen, nausea rising. I'd cried at yesterday's church rehearsal, overwhelmed by Mom's absence. Mark had held me, wiped my tears, whispered he understood. But he didn't. He was embarrassed. The next day, I drove to see Dad. "I think I'm making a mistake," I whispered. He took my hands. "Your mother would want you happy. But what if I'm not happy? What if I'm just afraid of being alone?" Dad's eyes filled. "The right person would cherish every part of you, including your love for her." Mark says I'm stuck in the past. Dad shook his head. "The right person knows the past is part of you, not something to erase." I drove home with Mom's wedding photo on the passenger seat. Her smile a silent warning I was finally ready to hear. The morning of the rehearsal dinner arrived with dread knotting my stomach. One day before what should have been the happiest day, and I was walking on eggshells around people who showed zero concern for mine. "Karen has everything under control," Mark assured me, straightening his tie. "We just need to show up." "I haven't even seen the final plans," I said. "What time for my speech?" About that, Mom thinks it might be better if you didn't speak. Your draft was a bit depressing. All that stuff about your mom watching from heaven. It's bringing everyone down. It's how I feel. I know, babe. He kissed my forehead in that patronizing way that had become routine. But do we need to share those feelings with everyone? Can't we just have one night that's happy? As if Mom's memory was incompatible with happiness. At the venue, Karen had transformed the hall into a shrine to Patterson perfection. Photos of Mark's childhood, their vacations, generations of Sunnyvale milestones. Nothing of mine. Not one image of my family. Were the photos I sent? I asked as she directed staff like a drill sergeant. Oh, darling, technical issue. The file's corrupted. Such a shame. They weren't corrupted. I checked them myself. While setting place cards, I overheard Mark's Aunt Jennifer at the bar. At least she can't wear her mother's dress tomorrow. Karen said it looked like something from a thrift store. Can you imagine a Sunnyvale bride in a hand-me-down? My mother's dress, the one I preserved, altered, planned to surprise everyone with. The one Karen had apparently mocked behind my back. An hour before guests arrived, Mark pulled me aside. You look beautiful. His eyes dropped to Mom's pendant. Just one thing. Mom thinks the necklace doesn't go with the dress. It's throwing off the aesthetic. I touched the pendant, feeling Mom's presence. It's my mother's. I know, he sighed, but it's just for tonight. Could you take it off for me? In that moment, I made the decision that would change everything. I kept the necklace on. The rehearsal dinner began with a champagne toast, crystal clinking under the HOA-mandated chandelier. I sat at the head table beside Mark, watching Richard approach the microphone with the swagger of a man who'd never been told no. Welcome, everyone, Richard boomed. Tonight we celebrate not just a wedding, but the expansion of the Patterson legacy within Sunnyvale Estates. My father and brother exchanged glances from their far-off secondary table. When Mark first told us about his new girlfriend, Richard continued, swirling his glass. We were concerned. Our son has always excelled. Top of his class, HO, a youth lacrosse captain. We wondered if someone from more modest beginnings could truly fit our world. My cheeks burned. Modest beginnings. As if Mom's teaching career and Dad's small business were shameful. But look at her now. Richard gestured at me. Almost unrecognizable from the sad lost girl Mark found crying at the welcome barbecue. Our son has a gift for fixing broken things. Mark beamed, squeezing my hand like his father had paid me a compliment. Karen took the mic next, silk dress rustling. A mother always dreams about who her son will bring home. While I initially pictured someone from our circle, she glanced at the society wives nodding along. I've come to appreciate what our bride brings. She raised her glass, upgrading the Patterson family with new blood and, hopefully, many grandchildren who will carry on our Sunnyvale traditions. Upgrading. Like I was software, not a person with my own history. And now, Karen announced, a special presentation celebrating the journey that brought us here. Lights dimmed. Music swelled. On the massive screen appeared a montage of Mark's life. Baby photos, school portraits, Patterson Christmases, Sunnyvale milestones. I waited for my part. The photos I provided of Mom and me baking, my graduation with both parents proud. They never appeared. The 20-minute video ended with Mark proposing at his parents' anniversary party. A complete lie. Technical difficulties, Karen whispered, catching my stunned face. Such a shame about your photos. Mark patted my hand. They did their best, babe. Richard returned to the mic, looser from the scotch. And now I'd like to share some thoughts about our new addition. He tapped the microphone, smirk growing. When you marry a Patterson in Sunnyvale, you get the whole package. Our connections, our name, our HOA-approved history. But the best part of Mark's choice? We don't have to deal with a monster-in-law. The room erupted in laughter. Can you imagine? Richard continued, warming up. Some controlling mother always comparing how she would have done things. My daughter deserves better china. My daughter needs a bigger diamond. His voice rose to a mocking falsetto. Mark was laughing now, nodding along. Instead, we get the perfect situation, a bride with, what do they call it? Novagi. No competing holiday traditions. No fighting over Thanksgiving. Just us. My father's face turned to stone. Jake gripped his knife until his knuckles whitened. Of course we do have to put up with some quirks. Richard dropped his voice conspiratorially. Like the constant waterworks. Oh, my mommy would have loved this cake sample. My mommy would have loved these flowers. People I'd never met were doubled over laughing. Distant relatives, business associates, all finding hilarity in the cruelest mockery of my grief. And that necklace, Richard pointed straight at my chest. She wears it like some kind of relic. Like if she takes it off, she'll forget what mommy looked like. Mark chuckled, glancing at me with an expression that said just go along with it. But seriously, folks, Richard raised his glass again. We're thankful for our son's careful selection. A bride without a mother is like a boat without an anchor, so much easier to steer in the direction we want. Karen dabbed at her eyes, tears of mirth streaming. Mark's brothers pounded the table. I sat frozen, unable to process the orchestrated humiliation. This wasn't an accidental slight. This was entertainment at the expense of my deepest wound. And Mark, the man who once comforted me, was laughing hardest of all. Something inside me broke then, clean and irreparable. As Richard launched into another anecdote about my excessive sentimentality, a strange calm descended. This was who they were. This was who he was. And I finally knew exactly who I needed to be. Karen rose, glass in hand, the perfect hostess ready for the finale. Before we end this wonderful evening, I have a special gift for our bride-to-be. She produced a small box wrapped in HOA branded paper. Something to help with the adjustment period. I opened it slowly, every eye on me. Inside, a business card. Dr. Eleanor Wright, grief counselor. For your unhealthy attachment issues, Karen explained loud enough for the room. So you can finally move on and be the wife my son deserves. Mark leaned over, breath hot. Maybe now you can let go. Tomorrow is about us, not your mom. The room went quiet, waiting for tears, for broken acquiescence. Instead, I stood. My hands no longer trembled. I've listened to you mock my mother's memory for 20 minutes, I said, each word precise. I've watched you laugh at my grief like it's a punchline. Richard's smirk faltered. Karen's smile froze. You've made it clear who you are tonight, I continued. And I finally realized who I am. I turned to Mark. I am my mother's daughter, and she taught me never to settle for people who don't value my worth. Baby, wait, Mark reached for me. It was just jokes. No, jokes are funny. This was cruel. Deliberately cruel. I placed the engagement ring on the table with a soft clink. There will be no wedding tomorrow. The room erupted. Karen's shrill voice sliced through the chaos. You can't do this. Do you have any idea how much we've spent? The embarrassment? The embarrassment? I repeated. Of having your true character exposed? Yes, I imagine that's uncomfortable. My father was beside me now, arm around my shoulders. My brother stood on my other side like a silent wall. You should be ashamed, Dad said simply. My wife would have welcomed you with open arms. She would have loved you as her own. This is how you honor her memory? Mark's sister pushed through the commotion and pressed something into my hand. I'm so sorry, she whispered. They did this to his last girlfriend too. I should have warned you. I walked toward the exit, head high, Mom's pendant catching a light. Behind me, I heard Mark's desperate explanations, Karen's outraged protests. But ahead was freedom, self-respect, and the knowledge that somewhere Mom was proud. You okay, sweetheart? Dad asked as we stepped into the cool night air. I touched the pendant, stronger than I'd felt in months. I am now. But the story didn't end there. Because while I walked out that night, I'd been quietly preparing for months. It started the day after that inheritance talk. I realized Mark and his parents weren't just insensitive. They were using HOA power to erase anything that didn't fit their glossy image. So I began documenting. Every ridiculous fine. Every rule twisted against me. Remember the forget-me-nots I planted at night? Karen's landscaping committee cited me for unauthorized emotional plantings that could lower property values. $250 fine. I paid it silently and kept planting in a backyard where cameras couldn't see. When I tried to hang Mom's wind chimes, too noisy per code, They issued a warning letter threatening lien on my house. I smiled, nodded, and recorded every conversation on my phone. I attended every HOA meeting, sitting in the back row like the perfect quiet resident. I watched Karen manipulate votes, pressure neighbors into silence, and pocket administrative fees that smelled like embezzlement. I gathered signatures from other homeowners who'd been fined for minor things. Kids' basketball hoops, flags that were too vibrant. Even one widow cited for having too many family photos in her window. I wasn't just enduring. I was building a case. The morning after the dinner, I didn't cry. I drove straight to the county recorder's office with a USB drive containing months of recordings, emails, and financial discrepancies. Then I posted a polite but devastating thread in the Sunnyvale resident Facebook group, public, time-stamped, with evidence attached. By noon, the neighborhood was buzzing. By evening, 3 other families had come forward with their own stories of Karen's bullying. Mark showed up at my door that night, eyes red. "Baby, we can fix this. Mom's just passionate about standards." "Standards?" I asked, voice calm. "Or control. You laugh while your father called me an orphan and your mother offered me therapy like I was defective." He had no answer. Karen tried next, showing up in her golf cart with a basket of peace-offering muffins. "Darling, let's be reasonable. Think of the property values. Think of Mark's future." I smiled the same polite smile she'd given me for months. "I am thinking of the future. The future without a dictator running our neighborhood like her personal kingdom." The board called an emergency meeting 2 days later. I showed up with my lawyer and a stack of printed evidence. The county investigator I'd contacted was already reviewing the books. Karen stood at the front, pearls gleaming, trying to regain control. "This is clearly a misunderstanding. We only want what's best for Sunnyvale." The room didn't buy it. Neighbors who'd once nodded along now raised their hands. One after another they spoke. Stories of fines for excessive holiday lights that could trigger anxiety, citations for unapproved grief benches, threats of foreclosure over minor infractions. Richard tried his charm. "Folks, let's not overreact. It was just wedding banter." "Wedding banter?" I stood again. "It was 20 minutes of public humiliation while you all laughed. And it wasn't the first time." I played the recordings, clear as day, of Karen admitting she'd shut down the memorial crap and Richard joking about steering the anchorless bride. Gasps turned to murmurs. Then anger. The vote was swift. Karen was removed as president. The board voted to dissolve the most abusive rules and refund every questionable fine. Mark tried one last time outside the hall. "I still love you. We can start over." I looked at him, the man who once listened in the garden, and felt nothing but pity. "You never loved me. You loved the version Karen wanted." I walked away without looking back. 3 months later, Sunnyvale Estates looked the same on the surface. Manicured lawns, white fences, HOA signs still standing. But underneath, everything had changed. The new board, elected by actual residents, repealed the ridiculous no emotional displays clauses. My forget-me-nots now bloomed openly in the front yard, a small memorial bench beside them with Mom's photo. No more fines. No more threats. Neighbors stopped by with apologies and casseroles. The widow down the street hugged me and whispered, "Thank you." I was too scared to speak up before. Dad and Jake visited often. We planted a new garden together, Mom's favorite flowers mixed with mine. For the first time since her death, I felt light. Mark and Karen sold their corner lot and moved to a different subdivision. Word travels fast in these circles. No one wanted to live next to the woman who'd been exposed for using HOA power to bully a grieving bride. I kept Mom's pendant every day. Sometimes I'd sit on the bench at dusk, wind chimes singing softly, and talk to her. "You were right, Mom. The truth always reveals itself. And when it does, you don't just walk away, you make sure no one else has to suffer the same silence." The satisfaction wasn't loud fireworks. It was quieter, deeper. Watching Karen's empire crumble because she finally underestimated the wrong, quiet resident. Hearing neighbors laugh, not at my grief, but at the absurdity of rules that once controlled their lives. One evening, I hosted a small gathering in my yard. No HOA approval needed anymore. Just friends, family, and new neighbors sharing stories. Someone brought forget-me-not seeds. Another brought mom's recipe for lemon bars. We laughed until we cried, and cried until we laughed. No one mocked the past. They celebrated it. That night, as the sun set over Sunnyvale, I realized the real victory wasn't just calling off the wedding or removing Karen. It was proving that grief isn't weakness. It's strength. And no amount of pearls, power, or petty rules can bury it. If you're living under an HOA Karen right now, silent, paying fines, biting your tongue, know this, you're not alone. Start documenting. Start observing. And when the moment comes, stand up. Because the moment you do, the whole ridiculous house of cards comes tumbling down. And the satisfaction? It tastes sweeter than any HOA-approved champagne. My mother taught me that. And tonight, under a sky full of stars, I know she's smiling. The end.